Hey, what's up guys? My name is Moda and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. So today's video going to be talking about ASIC miner prices and whether or not it's worth it to buy at these somewhat inflated prices, right? So we're going to go over pros and cons, things to really take into consideration if you're thinking of buying one on the resale market, right? Or on like eBay, things of that sort. So we're going to look at best practices, things you should look at, things you should consider before you do, right? Um, so if that sounds interesting, guys, stay tuned. All right, guys, so let's get right to it. The biggest thing, so first of all, before anything, and none of this is financial advice, right? I'm just giving you my thoughts, my opinions, the way I look at things, and what I take into consideration when I'm thinking about making these purchases, right? So first and foremost, the biggest thing, I know it sounds like a cop out, sounds like an easy way out, but this is the big thing, is that it is really purely up to you. Okay, a lot of this has to do with your interpretation of where we are at in the market, where you think we're going, if we're going to go up only from here, if we're going to dump. Those factors will play the biggest factor into whether or not it is worth purchasing at this time. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. If you have to do your research, you have to look into that project, and again, it's your overall opinion. Because again, the cost of the miner is directly related to the cost of that coin. Okay, if you think that coin is going to go up, if you're in that mindset where like 99% of these people now are 45K by the end of the year, they're all crazy bullish, then we're up only, right? Like I've said many times before, I'm more in the traditional 4-year cycle. That's where my mind's at. That's where my plan is at. Okay, so I'm preparing more for like sideways action this year, right? We may go up a little bit higher and we may go sideways from there, right? Or we may go down a little bit lower and go sideways. We may, again, like I said, we're going to have ups and downs. We're going to have to play the market. But overall, I'm not seeing like crazy bullish action from this year. Okay, if anything, I see a retracement from where we're at right now, right? But again, that's why a lot of this is really going to be up to you and where you think we're at, where you think we're going, okay? And where you think those specific projects are going. Because that's going to be the other big thing, with, especially with these altcoin miners. The video is going to focus primarily on the altcoin miners because that's where the variations are, right? Bitcoin tends to be pretty flat. Okay, yes, they've gone up a bit, but they haven't like doubled in price, right? Versus these altcoin miners, as we've seen, some of them have already. Okay, there's a lot more variables, there's a lot more things to consider, right? And there's a lot more potential upside, but also downside, right? So we're gonna go over different things you really got to take into account. So on top of it being up to you, the biggest thing to remember is that we are in a bear market. Okay, we are still quite a ways away from the halving. Okay, so there are going to be points and times in the timeline where it does make sense to even buy something at double, triple, right? So I'm going to reference back to like GPU mining, for example. Go back 2 years ago when a 3060 Ti, which only MSRP at, I think it was what, 349 or 399, there was a point in time where even in buying it at almost 3 times the cost of retail, you were still going to ROI in like 4 or 5 months, right? Even picking up one of those things at like $1,000, 1,100, 1,200, you were still able to ROI in a matter of 4 to 5 months, and then continue to be profitable for a whole nother year, year and a half after that, right? So there will be a point in time where even at that an extreme of a price, it may still be worth it, okay? But that time isn't now. Okay, that's gonna be after the halving, once we're in that like up only mode where the market is gonna dictate that. But keep in mind that that's not where we're at right now. I know it somewhat feels like it. We've had like 2 to 3 X's on some of these altcoins. This is not going to be that time though. Okay? It is possible, right, that we go up more from here, right? It is possible that some of these other altcoins, they do another 2X from here and we go sideways from there. That is possible, right? But again, that's why a lot of it is up to you and where you think we're going. All right? So let's give some examples now, because we did have just a great example just recently, and this is with that E9 Pro, right? I had made that video about it, made that post kind of joking about it, that it was going to sell out in a couple seconds, and lo and behold, of course, as we predicted and as we all knew, it did, right? This is a great like publicity, marketing stunt because it gets people's attention, it gets people's eye on it, and it's good for like the resale value of it, right? Those of you who got it at $12.99, congrats. But just like we predicted, a lot of it is going to be people with bots, people with scripts, and they're going to be the majority of who gets it, right? There were people who were able to get it though, right? Like I said, is if you were able to have everything auto saved, auto filled out, and check out within like 10 seconds, you were able to get it, right? But keep in mind who you're competing against. I mean, I've made this comparison in the past, but for any of those of you who have bought Jordans in the past, Yeezys in the past 5, 6 years, this is kind of where we're at, right? 99% of it is that's who you're competing with. Bitmain's not going to do anything about it because at the end of the day, they're still getting their money. That's all they care about. They don't care who it goes to, right? So that's why you have to really factor in who you're competing against with these releases, okay? Especially at these prices, okay? This $12.99, just based off of the $12.99 price alone. It could have had even like crappier stats than what it did, but just based off of the $12.99, we knew it was going to sell out, right? Things that are more reasonably priced, typically they'll stay on, right? Like they just did that restock of that K7. It was a lower version of it though, right? I think it was 58 terahash versus the 63.5, but it was up for a few days, right? It was a 20% increase from the previous model, right? Showing that the prices are increasing, but it did stay up for a few days versus the other ones sold down like 30 seconds or whatever. Okay, so you have to, if you have your eye on a project, you have your eye on a miner, think of that potential resale and where it's at, because a lot of the times you can still get it at those prices. Okay, so like with this E9 Pro, some of the other third-party vendors, distributors did have it up for $19.99, right? And like, for example, I believe it was either Nhash or CoolDragon.io. It was up for like 2 day, like a whole day before. It was up, it was for sale the whole day, didn't sell out until, of course, it dropped on Bitmain's website. Once it sold out there, it immediately sold out everywhere. Okay, to the point now where because of that, because it creates this hype, it creates this FOMO behind it, that people are paying these crazy, crazy resale values, right? So I was just checking again because some of the other places had it up. I never really saw it go for sale. Again, like I was talking to people in the comments and I was pretty much checking the price every hour, just out of curiosity, just so we can see what the numbers were going to be. The only other one that had it up, again, I think it was Cool Dragon or Nhash. It was Nhash, I believe, that had it for $19.99. And it was up pretty much the whole day prior, right? The next cheapest price was like Coin Mining Central. They had it at like 2,200 and same thing. It was up, didn't sell out until the day of. Then the day of, there was a few others who had it up on their websites. I never saw it live though, right? So I think it was Crypto Miner Bros and like ASIC Marketplace. They had them reasonably good price. It was like $18.99, but just showed out of stock. Again, I was pretty much checking hourly, so they may have gone up during the time that I didn't see, and that's when it sold out, right? But now, the cheapest vendor, it's like freaking $9,000. This is the cheapest one that currently has it in stock where you can buy it, right? At this extreme of a markup, it is not worth it. It is way too high. There is way too much risk, right? At $19.99, $18.99, I was ideally hoping that like BT Miner, somebody would have it at like under 2,000. Like if they would have had it at like 1,600, 1,700, I would have bought it at that point, right? Especially from BT Miners. Again, that's my preferred vendor. No affiliation, not shilling them. That's just who I happen to use. So that was the price I was looking at. They still have this placeholder value. They put it at $9,999 because then again, they don't really know where to value it at, right? So they're kind of just playing the market, seeing where everybody else is at. And unfortunately, it's at freaking $9,000. At $9,000, it is not worth it at all, guys. Okay? Way too much risk. Even if you believe in the project, even if you think it's gonna moon, even if you think whatever. Reason being is that Bitmain, again, does not care about the distributors or the vendors or anything. Okay? It is very possible and very likely that they will restock this thing sometime in the near future. And therefore will dump these prices. Okay? We already just actually saw that happen with the K7. Okay? There was a point in time when I made a first video when people were hiking the price up to like 6,500. Right? And then, like 2 weeks later, Bitmain did a restock. Right? Again, was a little bit higher, was $4,700, but then it forced all these guys to lower their price, right? So it sucked for those guys who didn't wait, another week, because it was a $2,000 difference, right? It's pretty substantial. And it's all because, again, Bitmain does not care about the market. They care about what they're going to sell it for, and that's what it is. They don't give them a heads up as far as when they're going to restock. A good example is the Z9 Pro. Again, they had no idea it was coming. It just came. We had a 3-day heads up, and you had 3 days to decide if it was going to be worth it or not. Okay, so a big part of why I do these like projections and do these things and show you guys what I'm looking at is because there's going to be other times where this will happen, right? Tomorrow morning, we can get a shock drop on the KA3 from Bitmain out of nowhere at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it'll be at like, let's say 6,500 now, right? And sometimes you'll have literally a 5-minute window to decide if it's worth it or not, because you just happen to be on Bitmain's Twitter account at that time. So that's why it helps for you to have, projects narrowed down, machines narrowed down, and price ranges that you're comfortable with. That way, if you do see that restock or you do have that opportunity to buy it, you already kind of know where you're at, right? Because otherwise, you may FOMO into it. You have to look at your projections and see where you're at, right? Because it can happen. Like right now, another good extreme example is this KA3 with yet another crazy price hike. Okay, it is up to $13,000 now. Okay, and this isn't just from BT miners. I decided to look, I don't know why this price increase happened or where it came from or what's getting attributed to it, but it's not just them. Okay, this is Safety Miner, 13,440. This is Cool Dragon, 13,970. This is AK Miner, 12,599. As a matter of fact, this one is out of stock because this one is slightly cheaper at 12,500. It's sold out. Okay, Coin Mining Central, another big one, 13,860. Okay, at these prices, to me, because it's such an extreme, way too much risk, right? Again, if Bitmain decided to do a restock in a week from now at 6,500, which is a 20% increase from the initial price, it's way better than this, right? So again, you have to keep in mind of the value of these things, especially if it's one you have your eye on. Okay, like I said, with that K7, the price drops, and so far they've remained at that close to that price because of that restock that happened. Okay, again, so these were like 65 not too long ago. Now you can get the 63.5 for 55 and the 58 terahash at 5,099. Right? It's only what, like 5% more than when you had the opportunity to buy it directly from Bitmain. Okay, but it's because of this restock. It's very unpredictable, and it's not. I would highly advise against buying when it's 2 to 3 times the MSRP in this current climate. Yes, everything did increase, but it can also easily decrease. We can also have another setback, right? And not to mention the fact that these are lower cap coins. Something can happen to it which can tank profitability. They can have a hack, they can have something else, they can have FUD against the project, we don't know. Right? Especially right now in the bear market. Again, in the bull market, it's a different story, right? We're pretty much up only. Literally 2 years ago, you could throw $100 into anything and it was going to 3x minimum, right? Because that's just where the climate was. Right now, there's just so much volatility, right? Any little piece of bad news can tank the price and it can suck, right? But at least the benefit of the timeline we're in right now is we know what the lows are. We know what the MSRP is. We know what it most likely won't go below or under, right? So like the KA3, it's probably not going to go ever under 5,300, right? Because it was at that price back when Kadena was 80-something cents, 70-something cents. Okay, so keep in mind also, that's just generally speaking. This is not even taking into consideration that with these coins specifically, not going to go into it too much, but if you've seen those Kadena videos I've done or the CKB videos I've done, is the increase in difficulty and how much the profitability is going to drop. Okay, also keep that into account. These prices are based on the fact that it's going to make the amount that it's going to make on like ASIC miner value, meaning these like $40-50 a day. But as we all know, it's not going to do that, right? But the average consumer or the, normal guy just coming in, seeing, learning about mining doesn't know that. Okay, this is why it's important for you to stay up to date, keep your knowledge level up, get different opinions, get different reviews, because it's not like how some people are telling you, oh, there's going to be a 20% decrease, 20% increase in the hash rate and the difficulty. No, as we've done those calculations, we know what the math is. We know it's going to be multiples, okay? Meaning that that value in ASIC miner value is going to go down, therefore the price should go down. Pending that the price of the asset does not go up though, right? That's the flip side of it. Is that if Kadena were to moon, let's say a month and a half from now, they were to do a 5x, kind of like what Gala just did, then the prices of these things are going to skyrocket, including the prices of those, even the smaller scale guys, the KD boxes and such, right? So that is the risk to reward factor. But specifically with like these KA3 prices, this is just insane. They're bordering almost triple the MSRP. Okay, at that point, it does not make any sense. 20%, 25%, maybe 30%, depending on whether you think it's worth it or not, more viable, right? Like the price difference with the K7 from what the new MSRP is and what the street price is from like BT miners is. That's not too bad, right? 10, 15%, 5%, whatever. But when it's 300% more, you really have to take into that consideration the fact that there's so much risk right now. Okay, a lot of risk when it's that much higher, because again, Bitmain can restock tomorrow and this thing can go back down to 6,500. Okay, or in like a month from now, when the profits are now, instead of being 50 bucks a day, are now, 18 bucks a day, the price will also go down. Okay, again, remember, these prices are based on the fact that people think we're going to make 50 bucks each and every single day, even after all these get shipped. Okay, but that is the purpose of these videos, to inform you guys, and those of you guys who have been watching, we know it's not going to be that amount anymore. Okay, even if they do release a tiny amount, we still know it's going to go down substantially. Okay, we still know a bare minimum. I'd say the bare minimum is that it'll go down to half. Right? So keep that into consideration. Okay? Because if that goes down into half and the price value of the coin stays flat, so for example, KDA stays flat, then this should go down substantially, because now this will be based off of a different metric on ASIC miner value, which is going to be much lower. Okay? So you really got to factor that in. Okay, so I'm harping on these two specific examples, but in reality, this will equate to any other release also. Okay, because as we saw, Bitmain just only gave us a 3-day heads up with that E9, right? Chances are that they can release another one, right? We can get a Sia coin release. We can get any other kind of release, right? At this point, it's like nothing's off the table. Okay, so just really keep that into mind. Really have those price points in your head. Right? See if it makes sense. Look at the risk metric, right? Specifically with this guy, I really want to harp on the fact that at this price, it is not worth it. Unless you really are in the mindset that within the next 6 months, we're going to 5x and we're going to continue from that point. Then maybe it's worth it, right? So that's why, again, it's also partially up to you. Okay? You really got to factor that in, but again, at this price point, for me, makes no sense. If anything, I would be looking into this guy. If you're that bullish on it, right? This guy at $37.99. Most places have it under 4. I think this was at $3,500 not too long ago, actually. They just did go up a little bit. Yes, it's half the power. Yes, it's not as efficient, but look at this price difference. $37.99 versus almost 14 grand. Makes no sense if you think that they're going to stay at that price point, right? But again, if Bitmain were to restock and they restock 10,000 of them at $6,000, definitely going to be more worth it to go that route if you believe in Kadena versus this guy, right? So you really got to factor that in. Okay, and whatever other releases come out, right? We're already in February. We know that most likely Gold Shell will be releasing a KD7 or KD Lite 2 sometime this spring, maybe early summer. somewhere in that timeline. Maybe not. Maybe they just said, screw it. You know what? We got so outclassed, we don't release anything. I don't really think that's going to happen. I think they're going to release a competitor to this, and it's possible that the price may be competitive, right? But again, just like I mentioned, on that flip side, a lot can happen 3 months from now. We can get that crazy price action, and now this guy is worth triple, and now this KA3 is 40 grand. Okay, so you have to, it's a lot of risk reward action. Okay, this is why you got to have your plan, you got to have your mindset, you got to have these prices like kind of ready to go. Okay, because again, Bitmain can release anything at any given time, right? Another good example is that S19J Pro Plus. That one dropped out of nowhere. One morning, 9 o'clock, it was on their website. No heads up. They gave us a heads up maybe 2-3 weeks prior to that. But the actual release was no heads up. Tweet in the morning, 9 o'clock, there it was. Right? That can happen with any of these other releases. Again, these distributors, these vendors, these direct manufacturers do not care about these vendors. They don't care about their inventory. They don't care about their bottom line. They're going to dump it on them. And it's going to suck. It sucks for these guys, right, who get stuck on this inventory. Especially when that happened with a lot of, the distributors for like Gold Shell, right? Those distributors were buying those KD6s and such at like, even at their volume discount, they were buying them at like 30, 35, 40, selling them at like 50 or whatever. But then a few months later, they were worth a fraction of that. And they get stuck with that, right? Because at the end of the day, the manufacturers don't care. They're there to sell that product. Okay? So keep all these things into consideration, guys. I know it was kind of a long one, but it's pretty important because I have been getting a lot of questions regarding that. Whether or not, whether it's worth it to buy these. You got to factor that in, though. Okay? Again, just to sum it up. When it's multiples of the price, like these KA3 prices, way too much risk in my opinion. Okay, because again, at the end of the day, tomorrow we can get a restock at 6 grand. And this is going to suck if you bought one today at this price. Okay? The K7, better buy because of that, because it's closer to the actual MSRP. Even the original MSRP. From the original MSRP, this is a smaller version though, but it's a 20% increase from there, right? The MSRP was $39.99. This guy being a 5,000. If you're bullish on this miner, you're bullish on this project, it's not too bad, right? But you have to factor that in, that if there is a new release, let's say there is a new model, the best time to really buy is prior to the Bitmain launch, right? Just like we saw with that E9. Okay, you were able to get it the day before easily at an increased price, and pretty significant. It was like 30% over. But if you were confident it was going to sell out, like I was, but I was hoping for like BT miners to have like a $1,600 price or something like that. But those of you who made out on this guy could flip it for $2,500, $3,000 easy right now. Okay, because it's just not available anywhere. And if anything, right now would be the time to flip it in case Bitmain does do a restock, right? Because right now it's essentially in price discovery. Nobody really knows the true value of these yet, as far as the aftermarket goes, right? We know how much it's going to make, how much it's projected to make, how much it could possibly make. But as far as like a stable resale value, we don't really have that yet. Okay, it's pretty much like a new asset. It's still in price discovery. Okay, the demand is going to dictate that price. Okay, and if people are FOMOing in, then it's like, just like I showed you, these people paying freaking 9 grand for something that just dropped at $1,300. It's crazy, right? But again, you have to like take all these things into consideration, factor all these things, look at your risk reward, and see if it's worth it to you, right? Because at the end of the day, like I mentioned right in the beginning, it is up to you. Okay, it is a lot of money. These ASICs they got to last, because in order for you to get your money back on them, get your return, you need to be able to mine on them for a while. Okay, and you have to have that plan set up, whether, again, if you're going to mine all the way through, or if you're going to flip it, or even if you're just going to hang on to it just to flip it. Like right now, with this KA3, I can, as soon as I get it, if people are paying freaking 13 grand for it, I kind of regret not getting more. I was thinking about it, right? Because even just getting one more, if I would have flipped that one, I would have essentially gotten this one for free, right? But again, it's you have to kind of have that value in your head, what you think the projections are, what you think it could be worth in the future, and set your plan up from there, right? But it is very risky, okay? And that's the reason I decided to go with one and decided to get a K7 also. Okay, that way it was diversified. I'm not all in one because, again, at the time, it was a crappy time. You know, Kadena was at 70 some cents. The market wasn't looking too hot. It was hard making that purchase, right? Now, obviously, it looks like a good purchase, but at the time, there was a lot of risk, and there still is a lot of risk, right? But again, that's why you have to really research not just that machine, but the project, the market, where you think we're on the cycle, where you think we're going in the near term, okay? You got to take all these things into consideration. And again, this is the perspective of an at-home miner. I'm not some big farm. I'm not some guy who has 10 ASICs in the garage. I'm going to be maxed out pretty much already with just like 3. I might go to 4 or 5, but that's going to be the absolute max. Pretty much maxed out right now because I really don't know how I'm going to deal with all the heat. We're going to see how well it does. Should be fine. I'm confident it's going to be fine. But before I even think of adding more, I want to make sure that I'm comfortable with what I have. Right? So these are all things you got to take into consideration because, again, for me, I'm not some big-time YouTuber. I'm not some big-time miner. I'm a smaller at-home miner, and these things are huge purchases. Okay? And so you gotta take all these things into consideration. All right? So hopefully, again, guys, I gave you something to think about, gave you some different insights, some different things to take into consideration. Okay? Because I know we all kind of talk about them, or you see these hype videos like, oh, yeah, it's going to earn $60 a day. Your return on investment is going to be 4 months, blah, 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 blah. Or they're factoring in that, yeah, it's still going to earn 50 KDA, and in 2 years, it's going to be making the equivalent of $5,000 a day. We all know that's not true. Okay, this is why the big part of this channel, big part of the content is to like ground everything based off of the math. Look at the hash rate, you know, calculate everything, look at future projections, think about all these things. Right? Because I've been through it. I mean, I've been mining KDA for 8-9 months now, GPU mining for over 2 years. So I've seen what the hash rate does, seen how much it can fluctuate, what it can do, and how, you know, how much things can change, right? So you really got to take all this stuff into account, okay? Because unfortunately with ASICs, you don't have the versatility that you do with GPUs. Right? GPUs you can resell fairly easily. They're worth, like for example, all of mine are worth the same amount they were at the time of the merge. Right? Not going to be the same thing with ASICs. Okay? A lot of the times they get to the point where they're unprofitable and they're worth a fraction of what they once were. Okay? Especially with these altcoin miners. Bitcoin miners tend to be more, you know, steadier, more predictable. With these altcoin miners though, especially as we've seen with these Bitcoin releases, or not these Bitcoin, these Bitmain releases, right? It can be devastating, right? It can be game changing. But that's why you got to be in tune with the game. You got to look at it, got to look at where you think we're going, and you got to stay with it, right? You got to really keep up to date if you're thinking of going this route. Okay? So again, guys, hopefully I gave you a different perspective, gave you some things to think about before you make that choice, right? So again, guys, this is a smaller channel. It does help a whole lot for when you guys comment, you guys like, especially subscribing, guys. It does help a lot. I never really realized it as a viewer, but now as a content creator, it makes a huge difference. Even just liking videos, right? It does really help push the content out there. All right, guys. So again, hopefully you got some good value from the video. Please comment, like, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, guys, and I am out.